How do you make a graphic memoir into a hit Broadway musical, especially a graphic memoir about a daughter's coming out and her closeted gay father's suicide? That is the challenge that faced composer Jeanine Tesori and lyricist Lisa Kron when they set out to put Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, a tragicomic, on stage. After a successful run at the Public Theater, Fun Home the Musical opened on Broadway this spring to rave reviews and a whopping 12 Tony nominations. In a minute, we'll meet the Fun Home crew and get a backstage view of the show. But first, Alison Bechdel's take on her experience.
I missed the opening night of Fun Home, the off-Broadway musical adapted from a graphic memoir I had published 7 years earlier. Due to a scheduling conflict, I found myself in a hotel in rural Ohio, repeatedly refreshing the New York Times theater page. I was just as glad to be in Ohio that night. It was familiar. Growing up in Pennsylvania, New York City had always been a distant beacon. I had ceded any creative control over the play. When I saw a preview 2 weeks earlier, I'd been stunned by how good it was.
Where is your barrette? Put it back in. Keeps the hair out of your eyes.
So would her crew cut.
But then how could I have any critical objectivity whatsoever about a musical based on my own real life and family? My memoir had been an intricate, non-linear account of my closeted gay father's suicide and my own coming out as a lesbian. I couldn't imagine anyone breaking into song. But then I learned that musicals are always about life and death situations.
You didn't notice her at first, but I saw her the moment she walked in. She was an old school butch.
Someone just came in the door, like no one I ever saw before.
And here we were, singing. One of my earliest childhood memories had become a lesbian anthem. My excruciatingly awkward first sexual experience was turned into an exuberant showstopper.
Am I falling into nothingness, or flying into something so sublime? I don't know, but I'm changing my major to Joan.
My mother, who had been a vague character in my book, was fleshed out with a devastating song about the toll of sacrifice.
Days and days and days, that's how it happens.
And the moment my father steps in front of the truck is a raw, dissonant revelation. My real mother had been ambivalent about my book and was even more so about the musical. She was passionate about the theater. I learned from her the Times review meant life or death for a play. The show spent years in development. Mom died 5 months before it opened. I was never really invested in her seeing it. I knew it would have been too painful for her in many different ways. But how I wish she could have seen the review. It was a startling, unqualified rave. My parents, who had met, as it happened, in a play, would get to go on living in one.
Please welcome Alison Bechdel, Jeanine Tesori, and Lisa Kron to the stage along with the Atlantic's Hanna Rosin.
You on the side?
Hi again. So Alison, you talk in brief in that video we just saw about the experience of turning your childhood into song. So we're going to talk up here about exactly how that comes about. When you were drawing that panel, did you have any idea, one day this could be a musical? Like, did that occur to you?
Does anyone?
No. No, it was very surprising to me when the idea of a musical arose. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to happen, what it would look like.
How did it arise? It wasn't your idea? Was it one of you? Like, where did the idea come from?
It was, the material was brought to me, and I had known Alison's work for a long time, but I actually didn't know that book, and it was suggested to me that it should be a musical. It felt intuitively right to me, although we've been doing quite a bit of, interviews and talking about what happened. And in the beginning of that process, I had all these reasons why I thought it should be a musical. But a couple weeks into that, I realized I had never written a musical before. So I could have as easily been wrong.
Okay, but intuitively right is surprising to me because it's
Well, it's
awesome,
50-50
but it's
chance,
internal.
really.
Okay, maybe it's just a 50-50 chance. Okay, let's talk about the things that might not work as a musical. It's internal. It jumps back and forth in time. It's largely one person's perspective and people from their imagination. So what was can you articulate what was it what struck you? I see this in song.
Those things actually are, in fact, what did make it work as a musical, because musicals aren't naturalistic, and they can convey people's subconscious feelings. They can convey emotional terrain. I actually wouldn't know how to write it as a play, because it's a family that is cut off from their emotions, but they're feeling a great deal, but they don't articulate it, and they are a little even unaware that they're feeling it, the family in this book, and yet in the book also there's an emotional undertow to the book that pulls you. I don't know how many of you have read Alison's book, but I highly recommend it. It's really a masterpiece. And
as is the musical, by the way, which I've seen both. Yes,
but it has this very profound emotional pull, and the pull is unexpressed longing, and I think that's great fodder for a musical.
That is so interesting. So is it that the music holds the emotions in some way? It's not quite that literal, is it? Where the dialogue holds
I wish it were that easy. I wish it were as easy as a recipe for bread pudding. I probably just said that because I just watched Still Alice, and I'm so obsessed that she didn't remember her recipe for bread.
I just watched Still Alice, yes.
Oh. I think the fact that I lost the book while I was reading it was really disturbing. But I think
did kind of ruined my life. Now we're on a tangent. I watched it by myself in a hotel room. Now every time I forget a word, I become terrified. Anyway,
I know. And I kept thinking, why is Julianne Moore so pretty while she's forgetful? So I think that, with musicals, a lot of it, first of all, there are no recipes for that. And I think when he shot his first animated, it's through all of these planes that you understand that there's a character who wants something outside there, and there's something that's pressing in against everyone. Parent against child, the society against individual, the town against them, all the time. Even the mountains, I think, where you grew up, were enclosed spaces where characters were pressing against. To me, that's where music is born, right in that gap.
But it's amazing to me that you can see all that you have that kind of clarity. I wrote the book, and those things feel very muddled to me. And you went in and found the exact right...
It's our superpower.
It took us about as long as it took you to write your book, though.
It took us 7 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty muddled process, also.
Yeah, we're equally muddled now.
Yeah.
God, from the outside, it's like a perfect female commune of creative collaboration. I feel very jealous. Anyway, why don't we call up a panel? We're gonna look at this process in even greater detail. Alison, do you want to tell us what's happening in this panel first, and why you drew it and what it represented in the story?
Yeah, this is a very, very early memory of mine. Something that happened when I was 4 or 5. I was out with my dad, and we went to a luncheonette where I saw this woman, this very masculine-looking woman with a short haircut and men's pants and this ring of, in real life, I don't know if she had a ring of keys on her belt, but I drew her with those keys on her belt here when I had to flesh out this very hazy childhood memory. And it's a big moment for me because I identified with this woman. I felt like I knew her. And in the same moment that I recognized her, my father also noticed her, and he said to me, "Is that what you want to look like?" Because we were always having struggles about whether I was wearing my dress and my barrette in my hair. And so I knew that it was not okay that woman looked like that. So I both wanted to be her and knew I couldn't be her. So it was a very powerful, formative memory, and these guys did something astonishing with it.
All right, let's now listen to what this looks like in the musical as a song.
And your keys, oh, your ring of keys. Do you feel my heart? No, I mean handsome. Your swagger and your bearing and the just right clothes you're wearing, your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys, oh, your ring of keys. I know you. I know you. I know you.
I have to say, it's chilling to see it again. It like captures the gestalt exactly in a completely, it's like funny, but completely poignant and moving, and it is that way in the panel, and it is that way in the musical, but I have no idea, how do you do that? Like, why did you choose that, of all the lots of panels in the novel, to say, that will make a great song?
Well, it's super, I don't know if we can bring the panel up. I'm sorry, I have a head cold, so I sound like, I don't know what I sound like. But if you see in that panel, if we can bring it up, and if not, that's okay. You can automatically see the tension and where the tension needs to be released. There's an object, there's an identification. The look on their faces is it's an absolute setup for song. And that's when we went through the book, and it got to the point where Lisa would say, page 63, the first panel, and I wouldn't know what she was talking about. It was awful. And then, but you can see the way that she's looking, the way he's looking, the way that Alison draws is dramatic action. It's a Snapchat. It's right there. And we talked about, I don't know how we got to Ring of, I really don't know, but I knew it was a song, and I knew the song itself had to be in song form, which a lot of them aren't, because an audience listens to song form completely differently. I tend to play with form a lot, but the delivery system with this had to be an A, B, a release, and then out, so that it was childlike, and then we pushed the language, and Lisa came up with this unbelievable language that suggested what she's grasping at and the way that she would fumble around. That's what you do when you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, I think we should go there. That's how people discover things when they first see something they recognize emotionally and they don't have the nomenclature, the vocabulary
So
for
then
it.
it's even better, this explains so much, then it's even better that the object is not there. Because the interesting thing about that choice for me was, like, you knew you were not going to have somebody walk on with a ring of keys. It just would be a weird extraneous character in the musical, and nonetheless, like, you pull it off perfectly.
Well, I have to say, this is a series of, and I'm sure it's in a way how you wrote the book, which I think is in a parallel universe to the way that we made the musical. It was a series of decisions that in the moment, just like acting, we didn't know that they were correct or not. And we did have her on at one point and thinking, well, how the hell would you cast that person? Where do they come from? And we need 9 people. There are 10 people in this musical. You can't have 30 people in this musical. We can't afford it. All right. So the limitation becomes your absolute friend of saying, okay, she's not like the best thing. The Jaws is the greatest thing. If you really want to be afraid of the shark, don't show it. Show the effect of the shark on all the people, especially that first woman, who goes back and forth, and you think, holy crap, what the hell is bringing her down there? And so I think, that's the result of many, many going back and forths.
And I think it's also helpful because I was afraid of writing this song because I was, that object of the character of the butch lesbian is a stock target of ridicule. And I was very wary of writing a song that expressed this incredible moment for this child, and which is so central to this story, and who these people are, and what the whole show is about. Whether we would be able to overcome that reflexive idea about that character. And I said to Jeanine, we can't write it for that reason, and she said, well, we have to write it anyway. And my rule, which worked out very well, was do whatever Jeanine tells you. So I did it anyway, but it was very difficult to come up with the language that would describe that woman in a very clear way and not key into those just reflexive stereotypes and ideas. So coming up with lace-up boots rather than combat boots, for instance, so that you know exactly what she's talking about, and yet it doesn't hook into that other thing. But I think the audience many people in the audience go through a process from when the older Alison says, this woman walked in, she says, because she's looking back on her memories, she sees her as well in her memory, and she says about the little girl, I saw her the minute she walked in, or to her father, you didn't see her, but I saw her the minute she walked in. She was a delivery woman. She was an old school butch. And many people in the audience laugh, sort of reflexively. And the first time that Sidney Lucas, the amazing child Sidney Lucas, sings Ring of Keys, people laughed for many, many different reasons, I think. But but they're all making a picture in their mind, which is a good thing. That's the nature of theater. But that picture then changes throughout the course of that song, and that also couldn't happen if that woman was there.
Yeah,
I think that's something that's evolving in the imagination of the audience as the song's going on.
You saved the word beautiful for late. I was waiting for her to get to why does no one see that you're beautiful? Like what she was feeling, she just doesn't say it until she kind of describes the details and then gets to her own feelings.
Which is a typical, in an AAB song form, a C. The release of that's usually a typical, what I would say is when the window shade really goes all the way up. And you're able to peer into something that you need. Song form is so unbelievable to me because, like a Bach invention, based on the first cell, which is like a frame, you spin it and you spin it. He was just a master at that. And a show is very similar, theme and variations, that you develop and develop. You don't invent. You develop something so that by the time you get there, you think, oh, that's that whole time. You're taking that one thing. And she couldn't get to that C. If she hadn't traveled through the A, the B, and then she's thinking, oh, wait, I'm this. How come y'all are not looking at her and doing what I'm doing? Oh, now I understand something about the world. And then to my father, now I understand how my father and the world are working against me. Okay, got it. And then you bury. I think you bury that with shame, which is, a topic all the way through this piece.
So for those of you who haven't seen the play, one of the major decisions they made, which I'm going to ask them about, is that Alison exists on stage intermittently as 3 different ages. Sort of middle-aged, college age, who sings that hilarious and beautiful song to Joan, and then child Alison, who you just saw. How did you guys make that decision? Or that's like possibly messy and chaotic, and yet you realized that would work. Did you struggle over that?
No, we struggled over manifesting it, but it was part of the original conception of how to do it. I wouldn't know how to tell the story any other way. I think Alison's book is also a nonlinear structure, and in a graphic novel, you can go anywhere you want. You can be from cell to cell in any time period. You can have any characters you want. You can be in a close-up. You can, Alison copies out newspaper articles or definitions from the dictionary, or all of a sudden they're in France and all of a sudden they're in Germany. You can't do that on stage. You have to have, as Jeanine said, you have to decide who your actors are. She shows herself from the time she's 3 or 4, basically, until the time she's in college. She shows herself, and then there's the narrative voice, her voice, in sort of captions in the frames, which is what makes Fun Home. The commenting, the understanding, the making us realize what this family doesn't know, that they're living with this secret of her father's closeted homosexuality. So how would that be, how would we manifest that? And also, you feel like, because the events of the book center around, and it took me an incredibly long time to figure out the structure of the book, because it covers so much territory. When you read the book, you feel like it's a forward-moving narrative, but really it keeps circling around and around and around the time period from when Alison wrote a letter to her parents telling them she was a lesbian when she was in college, to 4 months later when her father killed himself. And I think Alison's work is essay. It's personal essay. And she's asking these questions around and around. And I had been interested in my work, I think, in how to turn that kind of essayistic investigation of idea into theater. That's an intellectual process, an emotional process, a psychological process. You can't see anybody thinking on stage. You have to externalize all those things. So by having her memories, they're externalized. She actually physically walks through them. It was a way to theatricalize.
In our last few minutes, let's move from process a little bit to theme. Alison, you wrote this novel in one gay moment. We're in an entirely different gay moment now. So much so that, like, the stories of surely there will be closeted fathers. Surely there will be coming outs in small towns that are painful and difficult.
We've already been getting emails about these things happening. It's very moving, incredible.
But what does that mean to you? Like, are you nostalgic for the other gay moment? Kind of, the book is, it's remained relevant through the entire arc of gay change.
Yeah, well, it was a story I couldn't tell at the point when it happened in my life in the early 80s. Like, no one would read a story about a lesbian and her gay dad.
So who were you writing for? Well,
I didn't write it. It took me 20 more years to even think about writing it. And I wasn't sure who I was writing it for. I had written a lesbian comic strip for many, many years, and I thought, well, maybe these people will read my book. But I wasn't even sure because it was very different from my comic strip.
These people meaning my loyal
readership,
lesbian audience,
yeah.
Right.
So I had to actually even stop thinking of who was going to read the book. I just wrote the book for myself because it felt like such a peculiar story. And somehow it struck a nerve at the point when it finally was published in 2006. And it might not have if it had come out even a few years earlier. Things had changed so much culturally, and it just was a very good moment. And now it's another good moment for the play.
Right. Although you did say that gay feels less special now.
Oh, yeah.
which is a really funny thought that a lot of people have, I think.
Well, yeah, I feel like when I was young and when I was coming out in the early 80s, to be gay meant to be oppressed, meant to be kind of despised, and you had to find a way to manage that. So we would valorize our oppression and our difference, and that became a good thing, to become proud of that. But you can't. Then we made all these tremendous gains, and you can't keep hanging on to your oppression when it's not really there.
I think there's another piece to it, though, which is that if the traditional things that you do in your life are closed to you, then you get to make other choices, and you get to make interesting and conscious choices. I mean, I think, for us, it's been like the perfect moment, the moment where things are opening, where you're not completely crushed, where you can feel like you're creating something new in the world.
What about straight women? I mean, we're really against it. I'm just saying.
Your time is coming, Jeanine.
It really went.
Your time is coming.
Straight women who write musical theater, you're looking at right here.
That's true.
I'm very oppressed. Yeah.
What? Not anymore. Not after the success of this play. You were oppressed before this play got that review.
We're all suffering from our lack of oppression. That's what we're learning. It's terrible what's happening to us.
All right, our time is up, but last time I spoke to you, Alison, you told me that you were going to take the marvelous Joan to go see the play after not having seen her in 20 years. So before I lose you, what did she think of the play?
Joan, my college girlfriend, felt like her character in the play was much more confident than she actually was. But I think she really was that confident. She was very. She had her own little swagger. So I think she was misremembering a bit.
I think there's also an unspoken rule that when you choose who's going to portray you in a movie or a play, they get to be 20% more cooler and better looking than you
that
are.
Should
That's
be the
just
new
a general
Bechdel
rule.
test. That's
right.
what I'm
That's
saying.
the new Bechdel test.
Yeah. Really, anybody, it has got to be always good to be portrayed by Roberta Colindres, who portrays Joan.
Right.
She's really amazing.
Well, thank you all. You really, really should go see this play and read the novel. Alison will be downstairs signing books, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Which books are you signing?